This is the story of when I lost my phone at a park several years ago. It all happened one night when I was running. I would do lots of jogging for exercise, and this one park in particular was my favorite to go to. It was about a 15-minute drive from my apartment, but it had miles of trails, and I found that hardly anybody else was ever there. One time, though, when I was jogging, my headphones died when I was almost done. This is probably why I didn't realize I dropped my phone, because my music wasn't on, and I would have noticed it turning off. I would always jog with my phone in my left pocket. It must have just fallen out or something. I was kind of surprised that I didn't notice. When I got home that night is when I realized that I didn't have my phone with me. I realized it could have been anywhere on the trail. I first looked in my car, but when it wasn't there, I drove right back to the park. I retraced my steps and spent about an hour trying to locate my phone, but I couldn't find it. I wasn't sure what to do. I really needed my phone, so the next day I went and bought a cheap one to use until I either found my phone or decided that I would have to get another one. The next day after work, I went back to the park again. I looked again but came up empty. I was almost certain by now that somebody must have picked it up. Then later that night, I was on Facebook. I was on my laptop, just on my homepage, when I came across this post. It had been shared quite a few times, and I saw that somebody had posted they found an iPhone. It looked like mine, so I clicked on the post. This person said that they found an iPhone in a park and were trying to locate the owner. They asked people to share the post in hopes that the owner might see it. The phone was locked, so they said they couldn't find out who it belonged to right away. I contacted the person who made the post. It was a guy named Dan. I told him that I was sure this was my phone and I asked him if I could meet him to get it back. He said yes and suggested that we meet at the same park where I lost it. I was more than fine with that, but when he said to meet at midnight, I was confused. Of course, that instantly made me curious and also suspicious. I asked him why and said that that was really late. The guy claimed that he worked odd hours and was really busy. He said that was literally the only time that worked for him. I ended up saying fine because, after all, it was a Friday and I didn't have work the following day. Still, I was very suspicious of Dan. Now, when the time came, I drove to the park that night. In the entrance of the park, there was a parking lot, which was empty. Then there was a little bit of a field and several entrance paths and lots of woods. So I parked my car at about 11:50. Nobody else was there, so I waited. At midnight, I contacted Dan, saying that I was at the park. This was the only parking lot, so I knew he would have to come here. He did not immediately respond to me. I kept waiting and was getting more and more frustrated by the minute. Then I got a message from Dan. He told me to come to the path and said that he had walked there. This confused me even more, but I really wanted my phone, so I got out of my car and looked around. It was completely silent other than leaves rustling in the wind. I took a few steps towards the path. It was in that moment that I saw what appeared to be two large men coming out of the woods. They were walking in my direction but a long way away. By now, I was probably like 50 feet away from my car. As soon as I saw these two guys, I started sprinting back for my vehicle. When I got there, I did not bother to look back to see where the men were. I instantly left, driving away and out of the park. I went all the way back home. When I got back, I went on Facebook and was going to message Dan. I saw that his previous message had been deleted. I sent him an angry message accusing him of setting me up, trying to rob me, and I said that I was going to the police. He responded, denying it, claiming that he was just running late and would be at the park soon. I called the police, told them the entire story, and showed them the messages on my phone. Then I asked Dan to send me my phone in the mail. He was hesitant and claimed that he couldn't do it. However, the police contacted him after that. After they got involved, he finally gave me my phone back. Unfortunately, there was no proof that Dan got those guys to come towards me in the woods. I believe 100% that he was setting me up to get robbed or something. I blocked him not long after. Hopefully, I'd never see him again. I was searching Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace for a new phone. This was a long time ago, so it had to be like an iPhone 8 or something. Phones still had the home buttons back then. I found this listing for a phone. It was some generic-looking post, iPhone whatever for sale. New, around $350. It was a really good deal for the time that I remember. He told me all the small details I needed to know, that it was factory unlocked, never opened, and stuff like that. He sent me a video of the box too, still sealed. The guy, whose name was Kevin, seemed nice and easy to talk to over text. I got his number, and we discussed a pickup point. His location on the Facebook ad was much closer to me, but over text, he was telling me he was only there this morning and now he went about an hour north. I wasn't happy about this, but this was a really good deal, and I didn't want to pass it up. I started asking a bunch of friends if they'd want to come on an adventure with me, really just as a way of making the chore of accompanying me for an hour drive seem fun. My friend Mina actually agreed to come with on the promise that I buy her food for coming. So this Kevin guy sent me the address of a police precinct about an hour away, saying he only does deals in police precinct parking lots to avoid scams. I obviously had no problem with this. In fact, it made me feel a little more confident in this whole thing. I picked up Mina on the way around 7:30 at night, and off we went. She being in the car and having someone to talk to made the trip more fun. It was also a Friday night, so afterward we could go out and do whatever we wanted. When I got off the highway, we were about 10 minutes away and found ourselves in a very secluded, quiet area. It seemed like a lot of different wooded areas, occasional buildings and houses, and then more woods. We got to the police precinct, and there was no one visibly parked in the parking lot besides empty police cars, of course. We drove around the whole building a couple of times and didn't see this Kevin guy who said he was in a black Ultima. So I decided to call him. He picked up and said he's having issues with his car on the side of the road and asked if I could come to him. He sent his location, and I checked it. He was on the side of some random road with nothing on either side, and by nothing, I mean woods. That's the kind of area we were in. He asked me to come help him jump his car. He had jumper cables. I said, yeah, I guess I can do that. I mean, we drove the hour to get there. I didn't want to just drive another hour for nothing. Mina was shaking her head the whole time I was on the phone. The guy said, "See you soon," and hung up. Mina then basically screamed, "No way. This is sketchy. We're going home." I told her, we'll just drive past the location he sent and see what's up. I did agree with her though. This seemed incredibly sketchy. I just was very upset if we drove 2 hours for nothing. We did drive to the location, and when we got to it, we saw the reflection of a car's front lights coming up on the pitch-black road we found ourselves on. As we got closer, I slowed down, and it was in fact a black car, but we couldn't see anyone inside or outside of it. Mind you, it was very dark, but I feel like we would have seen someone's head on the inside or something. Mina said to just keep driving, and I said, I know. It was about the sketchiest thing I'd ever seen, a pitch-black road between two patches of woods, no street lights, no other cars in sight. A pretty convenient place to break down and have someone who's coming with a wad of cash to buy something from you come and meet. I drove right past it immediately. Kevin started calling me over and over. I ignored every single call. Then he texted me, saying, I saw you just pass me. Why didn't you stop? Turn around. Ignored. Mina is a very positive person, so she laughed about this whole situation and then said, okay, you owe me food. So I looked up the nearest diner, and we stopped there for some food. It was a quiet, small diner. We were just about the only people in there, even on a Friday night. The waitress just took our coffee order when a lone guy with his hood up stepped into the diner and sat in one of the bar stools. He was wearing a navy blue, dirty-looking hoodie. He glanced over to Mina and me, then looked straight ahead, talking to the lady working behind the counter, apparently ordering a coffee. The man kept glancing at our table like every minute, so I whispered to Mina, don't look now, but that guy at the counter might be the Kevin guy. The waitress came with our coffees and asked if we were ready to order. I said, a few minutes, please. When the lady behind the counter handed that man his coffee, he said loud and clear, thank you, darling. It was that guy from the phone's voice, Kevin, or whatever his real name was. I told Mina, that's him. We need to pay the check and leave. I waved the server over and whispered to her if we could just get the check. She asked if something was wrong, and I noticed the guy look over as I said this. I said, yes, we just needed some coffee for the road. So she got the check. I paid, we downed our coffees, and left the building. We got in my car, and Mina said, oh my God, he's getting up. I looked into the diner and saw that guy leaving towards the door as quickly as possible. I drove us out of that parking lot and sped down the road, and yes, we noticed a black car in the parking lot that could have been the one that we saw on the side of the road. I was driving too fast for him to have caught up. We got back on the highway, and I was flying for a while until I got a low tire pressure light come on. I knew instantly he slashed my tire. The PSI was going down fast, so to avoid damage, I pulled to the side of the highway and parked it. I went out to confirm that my tire was slashed. I had to replace the tire with the spare, which took about 15 minutes. The whole thing was a disaster, and if you're wondering, yes, I still got Mina dinner that night. Now Mina and I look at it as a crazy story that we can look back on and tell people. It's absolutely horrifying, though, how close we were to walking into a trap. I've had a Facebook account for many years now. I think that I made one when I was about 12 or 13 years old. This is something that happened back then. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but I know I was a teenager. I would go on Facebook all the time, probably several times a day on average. Well, one time I ended up getting hacked. The way I found out was that I got a text from one of my friends from school. She told me that she thought my account had been hacked. I logged into Facebook and saw that my account had made several bizarre and random posts late the previous night. Some of them were as if somebody had just dragged their hand across the keyboard and hit send. Others were strange sentences of words that didn't really make much sense. I was really embarrassed. There were even a few comments from friends with question marks on some of the posts. I didn't know who would do this to me or who would know my password. As I scrolled down on my page, I saw that there were even more posts that were made from my account. I quickly changed my password, then looked at them. Most of the posts were made within a 2-hour window the previous night, from about midnight to 2 a.m. There were about 20 posts in total. Then I got to one of the first ones that had been made. This post was the only one with a photo attached to it. It was a picture at nighttime of the house that I lived in at the time. I lived there with my parents and 2 older siblings. The post said, "This is where I live, everyone." It looked like the photo had been taken from our driveway, possibly the street. When I saw that, I was so creeped out. But since I changed my password, whoever this was would not have access anymore. I quickly deleted every post that they had made on my account. Then I wrote a post saying how my account had been hacked the previous night and the posts were not made by me. After that, I never found out who did it. I asked several friends, wondering if it was a joke or something, but they all denied it. I've even asked some of them years later, but nobody ever admitted it. To be honest, I just don't think that it was any of my friends. It could have been someone I went to school with possibly, or somebody that I don't know at all. I never found out, but the fact that they seemingly were at my house after midnight really gives me the creeps. It had to be 2017. I was selling this old pinball machine that we had from our childhood. It wasn't some crazy arcade-level pinball machine that would cost thousands of dollars, but it was definitely worth a few $100. It had been sitting in my parents' attic for the longest time, so I wanted to sell it before one of my sisters had the same idea. I didn't really want anyone to know about this because then I'd have to split the money, so I chose to list it when my family was away on a trip that I couldn't go on due to work. I'm a bit of a sneak, I know, but you gotta do what you gotta do. My parents' house is on the really nice side of town, but not in a gated community. I put the pinball machine up on Facebook Marketplace for $250. The next day, I got a message from some account with no profile picture with the name Tina expressing interest in the pinball machine. They offered $200. I agreed to that number. We set up a time for when she would come, but when that time came, she never showed up. She messaged me saying, "I'll be there soon. I'll be there soon." It was getting late now, and I had work the next day. I asked her if she would be here by 11 o'clock the latest. She said 11:30. I asked if we could do this tomorrow instead, but she said she's already on her way, so I just stayed up a little later waiting. 11:45 rolls around, and she finally tells me that she's here. I went to the front door and saw there was a car out front. What I wasn't expecting was to see all 4 doors of the car opening and 4 people stepping out, 1 girl and 3 guys. I messaged her, "Are you here with people?" At this point, she wasn't answering her messages anymore. I watched as the 4 people approached my door. I kept the storm door locked. These 3 guys looked kind of big, and all 4 of these people looked like trouble. As they got close enough, I said, "Are you Tina?" She said through the door, "Yeah." I said, "I can't let all of you guys in my house, my parents are asleep," obviously lying. Tina, or so she claimed her name was, tried opening the door, yelling, "What are you talking about?" As she saw it was locked, she started knocking on the glass. I decided it was best to shut the front door at this point. I heard their voices yelling outside for a while and the doorbell ringing. I heard one of the guys, or maybe even multiple of them, yelling obscenities and insults at me through the 2 doors, making me only gladder I didn't let them in. These were not the kinds of people I wanted in my parents' house, especially when I'm alone. I realized this whole thing was an awful idea when I heard their voices laughing and yelling on the front stoop for like 15 minutes after I shut the door. I looked out my little brother's bedroom window upstairs, which is directly above the driveway, and I saw one of the guys pissing in the empty driveway. No cars in the driveway was not a good look. The girl yelled something directed at me as they finally started to walk away, but I didn't hear what it was. I just thanked the Lord when they drove away, and I went upstairs to go to sleep. I was having trouble sleeping that night, though, thinking of the interaction. So, fully awake a couple of hours after climbing into bed, I heard a crash from downstairs. It was unmistakably the sound of a window being shattered. I sprang up, but right before sprinting to make sure the bedroom door was locked, I stopped myself and instead quietly got out of bed and tiptoed to the door. I had already locked it. I tiptoed back to my bed and had my phone in hand, ready to call 911. For some stupid reason, I was waiting till I heard any other kind of sounds before dialing, and eventually, I heard the sound I needed to hear, footsteps rapidly coming upstairs. I dialed 911 as I felt like throwing up. The footsteps outside the room didn't even sound like they were trying to be quiet. I whispered the entire time I was on the line with the dispatcher. Time was moving in reverse. I hid literally under my bed as I listened to people ransacking the house. In reality, they were in and out in less than 5 minutes, way before the police actually showed up. The backyard window was shattered. Things were stolen from just about each room. Ironically, the pinball machine wasn't taken. What happened from there was I got a police report number. I made an appointment to see a couple of detectives at the police station and shared with them all the details I had, including the Facebook account of the Tina girl. I fabricated the story of it saying someone in the house threatened me. My reasoning for this was I felt that this case would actually be taken seriously if I claimed I was threatened. To my surprise, they did take this seriously. The detectives apparently gathered the necessary data of the Facebook account in question to track this Tina girl, who lived a few towns over in a less than desirable area. With a search warrant, they searched her house and found multiple belongings stolen from my parents' house. She ratted out the 3 men who accompanied her, and they were all charged with burglary. I think most of the stuff that was stolen was recovered. I'm sure there were some things that I wasn't aware of that were stolen that were never returned, but to this day, it hasn't come up, so it's fine. I think by me claiming I was verbally threatened, it may have definitely helped make the detectives take this more seriously, but I could be wrong. My family was, of course, livid at first but came to be understanding about it in the end. This is something that happened years ago. Now, it all started one day when I went on Facebook and saw that I had a new friend request. It was from a woman who I didn't know. We did have a mutual friend, which was somebody that I was barely friends with but lived in the area. I accepted her request without giving it too much thought. I did not click on her profile to learn more about her or anything. Later in the day, though, I noticed that she sent me a message on Facebook. I logged back on and saw that she said "hi" to me. I responded, saying "hi" back to her. After that, we had a brief conversation. The conversation that first day was not too long, just kind of back and forth getting to know each other. But the only thing that this woman really told me about herself was that she was my same age and that she worked in a nearby city. She seemed pretty nice for the most part. Though that night, I thought that I saw her at my house. This was probably like 3 hours after our conversation on Facebook. I noticed this car parked across the street from my house on the side of the road. It was an unusual thing to see, and I just randomly noticed it. But when I did, I also saw that there appeared to be a woman in the driver's seat of the car, and she looked an awful lot like the woman messaging me on Facebook. This was really weird. I moved away from the window so that she wouldn't see me. Then I wondered to myself if this woman was possibly one of my neighbors or if she was at my house for some reason. A short time later, I checked the window again, but she was still there in her car. I thought about messaging her on Facebook but decided not to. A while later, when I checked the window again, the car was gone. For the rest of that night, I was left wondering what exactly that was about. I was creeped out by this and decided to stop messaging her. But the next day, she messaged me again. We had kind of ended our conversation the previous night when I had told her that I had to go because I was cooking dinner. She said, okay, then I had not said anything back to her. But now, on this day, she said, hey, what's up? I didn't respond, but just a couple of hours later, she said, you there? I finally responded. I asked her what was up, and she asked me how I was doing. After I said, good, I asked her what city she lived in. She named a city that was close to mine but not the same one. This ruled her out as being one of my neighbors. I didn't want to mention that I saw her parked on my street the previous night. I continued with the conversation for a short time, but then the woman asked to meet up with me. She said a time and day, but I told her that I was busy. She continued to message me and then started to become rude. The woman seemed to be upset that I declined her request to meet. I then confronted her, saying that I saw her at my house the previous night, but she completely denied it. At that point, I blocked her. This was just too weird, and I wanted to put it behind me. When I blocked her, I did feel better, but I also knew that she seemed to know where I lived. I had a feeling that she might show up again, and unfortunately, I was right. That very same night, she was back. This time, though, she knocked on my front door. I was in the kitchen when I heard it, and I think it was about 9 p.m. I walked over to the front door and, after looking out and seeing the woman, I moved back. However, after she knocked again, I heard the woman shouting at me that she knew I was home. She demanded that I let her in. I went to the door and, without opening it, shouted that I was calling the police if she didn't leave. But this didn't stop her. She stayed at my front door, occasionally knocking on it. When I realized that she wasn't leaving, I did call the police. I stayed in my living room near the front door. The woman remained there the entire time. About 15 minutes later, the police got there. I heard the woman arguing with them for a while. Eventually, though, they got her to leave me alone. She was told that if she came back to my property again, she would be arrested. I was afraid that she would, but luckily, after that, I didn't see her again. I really don't know what her problem with me was. I also don't know how she even found me in the first place. After this happened, I contacted the one mutual friend that I had with the woman to find out more. Like I said, the mutual friend that we had was a guy that I barely knew. We had gone to high school together but never really talked much. We knew who each other were, though. When I asked him, he told me that he honestly had no clue when he became friends with the woman or who she was. So I didn't really get much clarification there. I'm just happy that the woman actually left me alone after that. When I moved out of my parents' house and into my own apartment, I had a lot of junk and stuff that I needed to get rid of. I listed a lot of my things on Facebook Marketplace, things that wouldn't fit in my apartment and that my dad wanted out of the house. My was set some old childhood toys, book sets, and a whole bunch of other things. The weight set was what I listed for the most money. It had a barbell, a plate tree stand, and a bunch of plates. I was selling it for $450, which I thought wasn't a bad deal. Surprisingly, I wasn't getting many bites. I'd have some people hear and their message asking if it was still available and then never message me again about it. Until a few days after posting it, a guy named Tom messaged me showing interest. His profile picture was pretty grainy, but it was a guy with a fishing hat on holding up a fish. His account info was private. I couldn't see how many friends he had or anything, only that we had 3 mutuals, all 3 of them were girls from my town. The guy's last name was also the last name of a Tom I knew from my town who used to date a girl I was somewhat friendly with. So I right away assumed it was him, especially since I knew that guy liked to fish. After telling him it was still available, he said, "Great, when can I pick it up?" I was pleasantly surprised he didn't try to haggle the price down at all. I said I was available any night after 6 o'clock. He said he could come by tonight around 11 p.m. after work. I said that's fine, a little late in my opinion, but if that worked for his schedule, it worked for me. I then decided to just be a little friendly and say, "Hey, you used to date Mary, right?" I saw the typing indicator in the chat for a second, but then it went away and he didn't reply. Not for a couple of minutes. Then he said, "Yes." I thought it was a little strange, the random pause, but it could have been anything. Maybe he thought it was weird I brought it up, so I just said, "I knew I recognized your name." He read the message but didn't respond for half an hour. Then I got a message back from him saying, "Yeah. Can you send me your address and I'll let you know when I'm coming?" So I sent him my address. He read it and didn't respond for many hours. By the time I got home from work, it was around 6 o'clock. I went to the gym and got back around 7:30, the whole time waiting for some kind of acknowledgement from Tom. Then he finally messaged back asking for my number. I gave it to him, and seconds later, I got a text from a number with our area code. I have an iPhone, and when I texted him back, it was green. I sometimes will find that to be a red flag and possibly a scam because most people I know have iPhones. But I wasn't thinking that way with this because I knew this guy already. He said he'd be over in a few hours, and so I continued about my business. It was now around 11 o'clock, and I was waiting patiently for his text or call. I sent a follow-up saying, "Let me know when you're coming." It was around 11:30 that he texted me, "I'm here. Come out." I looked out the front window of my apartment and saw a dark-colored car out front in the street. I tried calling him so I could tell him that I needed help bringing the weights outside. He rejected my call, and then he texted again, "Yo, come out." I texted back, "I see you. You can come in. I just need help with the weights. There's a lot of them." He texted back, "And got to see if you're straight first." I had to process what the hell that even meant for a second. All I knew was this did not seem like the way this white-as-hell fishing dude would be texting. I tried calling one more time, and he denied the call again. Now I was suspicious. I decided to text that girl Mary, along with the mutual friends I had with Tom on Facebook. The first one to text back was this girl Hina, who said, "OMG, that's a catfish." Someone was pretending to be him. When I asked why she added it, she said it must have been a different name when it added her. I looked out the window again, and the car was still there. Someone was about to do something bad to me. I wasn't sure what or why. I had no way to contact the real Tom because he didn't seem to have any actual social media profiles, not public at least. I kept the doors shut and locked and didn't respond any further. I turned off the light in the living room and kinked the blind just a bit, and I swear on my life there was a guy hiding behind one of the bushes in front of the house. I watched until the car outside honked its horn, and then I saw the guy in the bushes run to the car, and then the car sped off. Witnessing that, I didn't feel relief, I felt gut-wrenching fear, not only of what I just narrowly avoided but the fact that those people now had my address. The Facebook profile was deleted the next day after a bunch of people reported it, though I think the people who made the account deleted it or deactivated it themselves. Tom himself confirmed he had nothing to do with any of that and that someone must have been using his pictures and name to try and scam people in the area. Though I'm not so sure it was someone trying to scam random people, because days later I got this threatening text. "Hey, you watch your back, we know where you live, keep trying to talk to my girls, see what happens, man, will you up right outside your crib, sleep with one eye open, we watching." I brought this to the police, but it was such a low priority report to them that I doubt they ever even looked into it. I have no reason to lie when I say I haven't tried talking to anyone's girl in the slightest. At the time of this incident, I had been seeing a girl pretty much exclusively. I think it's connected. I don't know who it is. I don't know what they were going to do to me if I opened the door, but unfortunately, I've had to live in slight fear in my new apartment ever since moving here. Fortunately, I haven't gotten any more threatening or random texts, but I still pretty much always check outside my windows first before leaving the apartment at night.